Everyone who's tuning in from all over the world. I'm Dave Dyson, and this is Deep Dive on what's new with messaging. So this is our first event after the Relate event that we had just a little while back. At Relate this year, we revealed some upcoming developments in messaging and across our products. And if you missed that event, you can watch it all on demand. We will throw a link into the chat there. If you're new to messaging, we do recommend that you check out our intro to messaging event that we had last year, and we'll link to that as well. And you can watch the recordings of all of our past community events on the Zendesk YouTube channel's community playlist, and we will link to that as well. And Brett, those links are all in the slide deck if you are there, or Devin. So let's find out who's who. Who do we got on deck here? So I'm Dave Dyson. I'm in the community team. I'm a community engagement manager. Paul Lalonde will be presenting all of the stuff on messaging here today. Hi, Paul. How you doing? And then we have a number of people who will be in the chat answering questions along the way. We've got Lauren Hakeem and Hillary Wright. And, oh, hello. We lost our slide deck here. But we've also got Devin, who you've met already, and Amy Spanier, Brett Bowser, and Megan Watson, who's not here today, but she helped out a lot in putting this event together here. Hey, Devin, welcome back. There we go.
Sorry about that. I had something reset on my computer. My apologies.
Go ahead and jump forward to the next slide there. Yes, so there we go. Devin, Amy, Brett, and then Megan, who's helped us out so much in putting this event together. And if we go to the next slide, we'll just go briefly over our agenda for today. Paul's going to be talking a little bit about messaging. He's got a couple slide or two on that. He's going to briefly cover what we introduced for messaging, things that are coming up this year that we introduced at Relate. He's going to do a short demo on the new features of messaging. He'll cover some best practices. I know a lot of you were asking about best practices in the questions that you submitted. And then we'll have a Q&A segment. We'll answer a lot of questions. We won't be able to answer all the questions that we got. For those of you, thanks so much for sending those questions in. We'll answer as many as we can. And don't worry, the event is being recorded. And you, after the event, probably Friday or Monday, you'll get a link, an email with a link to the recording of the event. It'll have a summary of all of the questions and answers. And it will also include all of the links that we post during the chat here during the event. If you have a question during the event, feel free to ask that, but we do ask that you please click over to the Q&A tab in Bevy on the right-hand side there and ask your questions there. It makes it much easier for us to track which questions have been answered either verbally in the event or typed out by the people who are folks like Hillary and Brett and Amy. So with that, Paul, why don't you take us into messaging and let us know what's going on with messaging.
Thanks, Dave. Will do. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here to support the community again and talk to you a little bit about all things messaging. I'm going to start by setting the stage a little bit. Like, why are we even here talking about messaging again? Well, in case you missed it at Relate, we talked about how we've entered the era of the conversation. Ooh. I mean, we've been talking about this a little bit before. You might have heard us talking about conversations for the last couple of years now, actually. But it bears repeating. The way that we communicate has fundamentally changed over the last few years. Almost nobody picks up the phone and calls anymore. Messaging apps like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp have literally taken over. But we think it's in a good way because it makes it easier than ever to have effortless conversations with people anywhere in the world. We think of messaging as a very unique and powerful channel. It gives people this ability to have live and ongoing conversations that help us build relationships over time. Not only are these conversations convenient, they're more human as well. That's what we call a conversational experience. And it's these experiences that have become the primary method of communication between customers and businesses. And the numbers speak for themselves, really. According to our CX Trends report, customer engagement is up 14% compared to last year, which on paper can feel pretty scary to teams because you're probably thinking more engagement means more volume, which could mean more work, but it doesn't have to. Messaging presents this awesome opportunity for teams to resolve more issues through automation so that agents aren't tied up answering questions that could easily be answered by a bot. And it's not just about bringing automation to the forefront of conversations with your customers. It's also about how those experiences and interactions are personalized. Another stat to throw at you, 68% of customers said that they expect all experiences to be personalized, same CX Trends report. And by keeping ticket volume under control through automation, this wonderful thing happens. Agents are empowered to actually have time to focus on more complex issues that require that human touch, which we know makes all the difference. Personalization, by the way, it's no longer just knowing the customer's name. The bar has really been raised there. It's about knowing what information customers need before they even ask it. And it's about having the full context of their conversation with your brand. It's also meeting customers on the channels that they prefer and giving them the flexibility to switch between channels without having to repeat themselves. Maybe one last stat for you, 70% of businesses say that their top priority is to let customers switch between channels to resolve a single issue if they need to. So the good news here is that Zendesk can help you do all of this and even makes it look effortless. Most of you tuning in today are probably already Zendesk customers, the vast majority of you. You probably know that the support suite comes packed with lots of good stuff like messaging, which you can set up in just a few clicks. And this is really going to open the door to all of that stuff around automation and personalization that I was just talking about on that other slide. What we're going to do today is dive in deeper into some specific messaging functionality, and we're mainly going to be talking about automation and personalization, basically trying to connect the dots between some of the announcements that we made at Relate last week and what we're going to be talking about today. Like Dave mentioned a little bit earlier, we had a messaging event last year where it was really like an introduction to a lot of the fundamentals of messaging. So if you're looking to bring yourself up to speed on the basics, I recommend that you check that out because we'll touch upon some of that, but it's not going to be the main focus of today's event. Next slide. Actually, we're just going to go straight into what's new here. Before we even hop into a demo, which we're going to get to in a second, I just want to briefly review some of the exciting solutions that were launched this quarter for messaging that really bring those themes of automation and personalization to the forefront. The first one is a new bot building experience that we just launched. Or are about to launch rather. We've drastically improved the bot building experience, making it simpler, smarter, and more scalable thanks to a new, I call it like a modular approach, which you'll see in a minute in the demo. Admins no longer need to maintain long, complex flows. You can create separate answer-led flows that the bot can actually use to address individual customer topics, returns, for example. Admins can also teach the bot intent and account for the different ways the customer might ask a particular question to ensure that the bot actually matches incoming questions to the right answer all the time. So this is new. We didn't have that in the first iteration of Flow Builder that we released last year. We know that this has actually been a very active topic in the community, and it's something that we're really proud to and excited to address here. Prior to this, any customer that was presented with a list of reasons they were reaching out were instead responded to with this sort of like they would end up in a bit of a loop, if you will, and this new release actually addresses that. Next up is Flow Builder for social channels. You go back a slide. There's just a little bit more to cover here. Yeah. You'll see this in the demo coming up in a minute as well. This is a pretty exciting one because admins can now activate bots on their preferred social apps as well. This was an EAP for a while, but we've just GA'd it. It means that they can actually publish their flows to social channels that you might already have added to your support instance, like Instagram and Facebook Messenger. So imagine that you can bring automation to those social channels as well. It not only allows you to meet your customers where they are, but it also improves their overall experience with your brand by really making it consistent across all the different channels. So you don't get one experience on Instagram and one experience on your website and one experience through WhatsApp anymore. That consistency is key when you're looking to scale up your operations and deliver a better experience to your customers. Last but not least, before we get into that demo, is pages viewed. We heard you on this one as well. Pages viewed is now available in messaging. This was after office hours. It was one of the most demanded features that existed on chat that customers were asking for those who are interested in making the move to messaging. So we're happy to announce that this feature now exists on messaging too. You can find it in the context panel above the interaction history. And well, I guess like the name suggests, it shows the pages the visitor has clicked on before and during a conversation in real time, maybe a little bit creepy, but yes, this is how it works, provided that they've actually opened the web widget first. Access to this web activity really gives your agents more context about your customers in real time for more personalized and actionable support. You won't see it in the demo, but we do have a little GIF if you're on the GIF team, of it later in this presentation to give you an idea of how it looks and how it actually works. Okie doke.
Best practice.
That was a short break, but going. We'll get to the demo in a couple of minutes. We can interrupt me and then get back to the scheduled programming. Yeah, so moving on to best practices. You know, yes, we missed the demo. We'll get back to the demo. Sorry about that. But we've spent some time on the solutions themselves. At least I've talked you through them for the time being. You got the chance, or will rather have the chance to see them in action. But you know, like when you register for this event, people actually, you have the chance to ask a question, right? And what came shining through loud and clear was people were asking for best practices, how-tos when it comes to using messaging. And a couple of themes emerged. And what was really nice is that we're very relevant to the topics that we had planned to discuss today, actually. So we've grouped a number of those questions together around best practices for automation and for personalization as well. I wish we could spend the whole event talking through best practices. We only have maybe 10 minutes or so to go through everything. We do have more to share that we will share after the event that covers even more about best practices, and we'll share some other resources as well for those who are really passionate about that topic. But you know, to get started, we got a lot of questions about bots. We got requests for tips and tricks on how to make best use of Flow Builder. So I'm going to start with that. Automation is great. It helps businesses do more with less, especially in a world where ticket volumes are increasing, like I was talking about, where wait times are longer than ever, and where quality agents can be harder to find these days. But too much automation can also be overwhelming, especially when it creates a wall between your customers and their ability to get a hold of a human when they need it. So the point I'm trying to make here is you should never really be looking to automate everything under the sun. But on the other hand, you do have to start somewhere, right? So where do you actually start? The first thing that you're going to want to do is identify your top service issues. You should be asking yourself, which of them should I automate? What should I not automate because it's a very high touch or complex or business critical issue that I don't want a bot to handle. You should really be letting your bot handle repetitive questions, common questions that get asked so that you can free your agents up to focus on those more complex issues that require a human touch. The bots are able to kind of be that first line of defense and give answers to customers 24/7 whenever they need it, even when agents aren't available. We recommend identifying common topics, FAQs, and relevant help center content that can be linked out to when automating those repetitive questions. A good place to start is to look at one-touch tickets to your agency frequently. You can also attach your top FAQs to your bot greeting for faster and easier access to answers in the form of options and whatnot. You've probably don't even realize it, but you've probably done some of this already when you've set up your help center. For those of you who have a help center, because it's the same thing. You're trying to bring those commonly asked questions to the forefront of your customers. That's another good place to go searching for the material that you're going to want to feed your bot. Next point, not all things can be solved by your bot. So don't take away the ability to put your customer in contact with a real human. CX Trends found that the top most frustrating chatbot experiences are when customers can't get an accurate answer, have to start over when they get a human agent, or just simply can't get through to a human. These are like really dissatisfying from a customer experience perspective, and it showed it in our research. I think 70% of customers said that they, didn't like that type of experience. They only think that a bot is good for handling common questions. Bots can intelligently escalate to a human when needed. They can even pass on context or conversation history to agents, so customers don't have to ask. Agents don't have to get customers to repeat themselves. Another best practice in that vein is to gather information up front. You may not realize it, but what you're actually doing when you're collecting customer information is gathering what we call intent. This intent is super valuable. It unlocks the ability to do all kinds of nifty things inside of Zendesk. Like consider what information would be most relevant to collect from a customer, so the bot can actually route the right agent and agents to the right agent and agents, getting the right context to personalize conversations and solve issues faster. Doing this actually helps save agents time because it keeps them from having to perform tedious manual triage. It also does things like give them contextual cues so that they can actually dive more quickly into an issue without having to ask customers to repeat themselves. Again, that top irritator that I was talking about just a little bit before. You can use custom fields to collect whatever information you want. Information collected can be mapped to ticket fields for added context. It can be easily made visual, in the tickets through tags and whatnot. And you can also use it to set business rules and routing, so your customers don't get bounced around between teams, departments unnecessarily. So to wrap up this particular topic, you might be asking yourselves, well, how on earth do I even know when I've gone and automated too much? Do not worry. You don't have to get it perfect on day one. There will be some adjustments to make along the road. Data obviously helps. So once you've set up a flow, you can actually use Flow Builder reporting and Explore as your guide to see how your bot is actually doing. Like what are the most frequently selected options your customers are going through inside of the flow? Where are they falling off inside of your flow? So you can make adjustments along the way. Again, it's not going to be perfect on day one, but with the reporting and whatnot, you can see how you can optimize your bot flows as that data becomes available inside of Explore. If you want to go to the next slide, We'll cover a couple of tips and tricks around the personalization component. This came up quite a bit in the questions that were asked as well. Like we said, personalization is much more than just knowing your customer's name. We did another community session on this topic last year, but it bears repeating. Customers like being able to reach out to you on their favorite channels. So why not meet them where they are and get a real person sliding into their DMs? It's a figure of speech, and find out which social channels are popular in your region and deploy your bot on those channels too, because, well, you can. That way you're ensuring that you're delivering a consistent, personalized experience on all your channels. Once you've identified the channels that you want to support, make sure to highlight them where relevant, helpful, and convenient. For example, you can actually go into the channel section of Admin Center and customize your own WhatsApp button and put it on your website so that customers can easily reach you from outside of the app. Second point, considering the pages viewed feature that we just launched as well, it makes your agents look pretty cool because they're able to see where your customers have been and where they're actually interacting, like what they're actually interacting with during a conversation with the widget activated. So it's helping your agents have a better view of what the customer is actually doing on your website. It's saving them time per interaction, and letting them, again, focus up on more of those complex issues, or just be a guiding light when they're actually doing troubleshooting. A couple of examples of how pages viewed might be used, just to put it into kind of, more context. Say a customer opened the web widget from a product information page. Well, your agent can be like, I see you were looking for information on this page. How can I help you with this particular product? Or a customer opens up the web widget from a checkout page. Well, maybe the logical thing to ask the customer is, are you having issues checking out? Can I help you? Can I help you with checkout on this page? An agent is troubleshooting an issue with the customer and sees that they've been to 3 different help center articles on a particular topic. Well, the agent doesn't have to, already knows where the customer has been and is not going to send customer to 3 articles that they've already viewed. So these types of things are all ways that pages viewed is actually quite helpful in terms of improving the customer experience and doing those little added touches that actually make it personal. Lastly, another feature that we talked about in Flow Builder, which was just released, is the ability to data dip in other systems. So this kind of crosses between like the automation and this personalization component quite nicely. Imagine a world where you can now, a customer can actually ask, like, where's my order? And the bot asks a couple of questions and is able to provide an answer without the customer even having to speak to an agent. This is a pretty cool feature that was previously only available if you had API access through our Sunshine Conversations platform, and we're bringing it into the hands of you, the admin, without the need to have that any longer. It's something that we'll be demoing when we get the demo back up and running.
In this demo, I'll walk you through Zendesk's latest automation capabilities that can help you create even better customer experiences. Ava just moved into a new apartment and is planning to host a housewarming party. She's a regular shopper at HomeBuy, an online home goods store where she recently purchased a dining table. Ava wants to make sure that dining table is going to be delivered on time for her party, so she decides to contact HomeBuy by messaging them directly on Instagram. As we're seeing, Ava's already interacted with HomeBuy about a previous question that she was able to get resolved. Now Ava's returned to the same conversation, and right away she's greeted by HomeBuy's bot with several options of how she can be helped. Ava sends a message inquiring about the status of her dining table. In order to help Ava, the bot quickly collects some information from her, and upon replying, she sees that her dining table is on the vehicle for delivery and will arrive just in time for her party. When the bot asks for feedback, Ava's pleased with how quickly she got the information she needed, all without having to speak to an agent. Now let's jump over to the admin experience to see how Zendesk makes conversations seamless for customers like Ava. We've drastically improved the bot building experience making it simpler, smarter, and more scalable. Within the Home by bot, I have a list of answers that the bot can use to address customer questions about individual topics. I'm going to select the Add Answers button to create a new flow that's intended to answer customer questions about delivery status. We know many customers like Ava are asking about their delivery in different ways. To solve for this, I can train the bot to ensure it recognizes and matches any relevant questions about delivery to the right answer by adding common phrases customers may use to describe their intent. Once I've added those training questions, I can start to build out my flow. I'm going to start with a collect information step, which enables the bot to ask for information from end users. Here I've added a custom message along with the tracking number ticket field for the bot to help customers who ask about delivery. As a next step, I want to connect the bot to HomeBuy's DHL API to bring in order information. That way, the bot can surface delivery status into the conversation for a more personalized experience. To do this, I'm using the Make an API call step. Once I've entered in all the endpoint details, I can make a test call to the DHL endpoint, and from there, search for my estimated delivery time details and save it as a variable in my flow. I'll end my flow with one last step, with a custom message and my save variable, so the bot can communicate estimated delivery time to customers like Ava. Before I publish my new flow, I can check my standard greeting message and attach options for customers to get help as they interact with the bot. And because we're getting lots of inquiries about delivery status, I'm going to go ahead and pin that answer to HomeBuy's greeting message. When I'm finished, I can click publish, and just like that, our bot is live and connected to HomeBuy's website, mobile apps, and social channels to allow customers like Ava to get help on a channel of their choice. As you can see with Zendesk, you can build a more conversational bot experience that scales with less effort, more integrations, and across channels of your choice so that you can have more meaningful conversations with your customers.
All right.
Awesome.
Shout out to Lauren, who's doing QA right now. That is her wonderful voice walking us through that demo. Thank you, Lauren, for putting that together for us. I think what we're going to do at this point, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, you get back to the slide deck, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. So we'll get to as many of these questions as we can. What's our first question there, Devin? Yes, so what's the difference between chat and messaging? We had a lot of people asking about, like, what's the benefits of messaging? If I'm using chat, why should I move to messaging? Things like that. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, this is actually like our #1 question of all time. We've answered it a couple of times in the events in the past as well, and I think it's just it's such a great question that comes from the community that it bears repeating once again. I'll explain it in a way. If you want to go to the next slide, I think, do we have the visual for it? We do. Okay, yeah. So aided visual here to kind of walk you through high levels some of the differences here. Live chat, it has a distinct start and stop, and it can only be done in like real time. In other words, it's session based. You have to stay in the window, make sure you start and finish your conversation then and there. And if you close your browser, you need to start over from scratch. Messaging, on the other hand, allows you to start the conversation and then, I don't know, go out to run an errand or pick up your conversation whenever you want to. It removes the sort of constraints of that one-time session because you can either have that session in real time or you can make it more casual, more familiar, more ongoing, that can span several hours, days, even weeks sometimes, where you just come back to the conversation when it's convenient for you, the same way that you would with your friends and family. In other words, messaging conversations are different from chat in that they don't have that distinct start and stop unless you want to configure it that way. While part of a conversation can wrap up, it can be picked up at any time, and that it really puts the power on the customer side as well, so that they're doing it when they're messaging you when it's convenient for them. Meanwhile, the context is carried over to agents in the ticket, so that whenever the customer is ready to pick up the conversation, everything that you need is inside Zendesk, in order to help out that customer more fast and more efficiently. Another one that I wanted to mention as well, often overlooked, is that, even though it shouldn't be, is that messaging comes with a lot more tools for automation than chat does, which is really a big differentiator here. Chat, by design, wasn't really made in a sort of automation, self-service first type of mentality. Messaging brings the concept of giving customers self-service on their own time to the forefront of that end user experience, because customers do want to be able to resolve issues on their own. They don't always want to have to speak to a human for simple issues that they might have a question about. And it's a lot easier to get a bot to answer a question for you than, say, to navigate a help center, for example. So there's some benefits there, which again differentiate messaging from chat. Unlike chat as well, there's other tools that messaging comes with as well, that makes all of this experience more effortless for customers. There's quick replies. We just talked about some of the new stuff as well that comes from that we released from social channels, bringing that to other bots to social channels as well. And again, as an admin, these are all things that you can configure inside of Admin Center out of the box, whereas in chat, you had to be able to have a developer API access, or using custom apps and stuff like that to make these kinds of things happen. There's more to it than that, I think, but this is sort of like at the very highest level, just to situate people who ask that question. That for the uninitiated, this is the main difference.
Yeah, and again, if you go back, if you go check out that intro to messaging, event, I think we go into a little bit more detail about some of the benefits of messaging and the difference between messaging and chat. All right, next question. Can external bots integrate into messaging without smooch?
Yeah, so just for those who might be wondering, like, what do we mean by smooch? It is not a smooch on the lips. Smooch is a messaging platform that Zendesk acquired a couple of years ago. Just wanting to add that context. So the question is actually being asked, is, can you integrate external bots into messaging without Sunshine Conversations, which is what Smooch once was. The answer to that is that a Sunshine Conversations license is needed today to integrate an external bot into messaging. You can actually check out our bot marketplace for what we call low-code bot options that are actually already integrated into messaging and the agent workspace, which eliminates a lot of the pro code, more developer heavy type of bot integrations that we've heard customers are like, this is complicated on messaging. We need easier options if we're actually going to build our own custom bot on messaging, and that's what our marketplace does.
All right, thanks, Paul. Next question. How can we facilitate data collection and routing for social media channels with messaging?
Yeah, so we actually just, we kind of talked about this we did talk about it when I was walking through some of the best practices and presenting some of what's new. But just to reiterate, having launched flow builders for social messaging channels, customers can now deploy their bot on channels like WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger. One thing, worth clarifying, actually, because this came up once, I think I saw it in the questions as well. You don't, the bot is actually going to collect data in the richest possible format on that given channel, right? So we know that WhatsApp doesn't have, quick reply options and is not as feature rich as, say, like a Facebook Messenger. And so you don't have to worry about any of that. All you need to do is worry about configuring your flows and deciding what data you want to collect. And we take care of translating that data collection request in the richest possible format on that channel. Data collected, including custom fields, can actually be used to create business rules and routing as well. I think we're going to drop in the chat some more information on how you can actually go about and configure that.
Thanks, Paul. And as Devin said in the chat, all of these questions that we're addressing now were ones that were submitted by those of you who signed up and submitted your questions ahead of time when you registered for the event. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for these great questions. And what's our next question, Devin? How do you auto route to people in messaging within a specific group?
That's a good question. It comes up quite a bit. For chat transfers to work properly, you actually, this is a chat related question, actually, for those who need that additional piece of context again. For chat transfers to work properly, you need to, in messaging, you need to make sure that the chat departments in your account are mapped to support groups. This is a change that's actually brought about by enabling agent workspace on your account as well. So just remember that a prerequisite for using messaging is to first enable the agent workspace. So if you haven't done that, you need to do it first. And pro tip here, you can use the agent workspace migration wizard to automatically do the mapping for you when you first enable the agent workspace. Again, we'll put some links in the chat on how to do all of this, and just make sure that any chat department that needs to send or receive chat transfers is enabled in the chat dashboard. You can enable chat departments before or after migration.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. And our next question, what would the transition be for our team if we moved from chat to messaging? So I think you covered a little bit of this just now.
Yeah, I'm going to cover this one a little bit broadly. The reason being that, it's a little bit, it's going to be different for every company, unfortunately. So the transition is not going to be the same for, say, like a small business, as for an enterprise customer. It won't be the same depending on the features that you're using in chat and how you want to go about setting up your messaging experience as a result of the features that you're using. I think where to start unpacking some of this subject, and again, in 1 or 2 minutes only here, you need to be thinking about a couple of things. Changes to the customer experience first and foremost. When you're thinking about, it's not just the fact that you're putting a brand spanking new widget on your website that looks and behaves a little bit differently, that now comes with automation that you need to be thinking about how you're going to set up and use that as well. There's things like, expectation management that changes when you're moving from chat over to messaging. The concept of a queue disappears because we handle that differently in messaging. There's no more notion of, you are 10th person in the queue. Because in messaging, the idea is that you have because of self-service and the asynchronous nature of it, you're not waiting in a queue the way that you would in chat. So how do you handle this? There's ways of setting up autoresponders, business rules to behave differently depending on whether you're logged in, your agents are logged in and available during certain times of the day or not. Things like that are going to, you need to be aware of and are going to change when you're migrating over from chat to messaging. There's also the agent experience component of it as well. What we often hear from businesses is, well, how do my agents, you keep on talking about messaging as being asynchronous or not in real time any longer. So how am I supposed to manage those conversations differently inside of agent workspace? What do I do if my agent isn't around by the time that the customer decides 10 hours later that they finally feel like responding back? That's a big one to unpack. I think, what the thing to think about for that, and we're going to leave some documentation on it as well, is that ticket like triggers and rules within the that you're going to set up when you're setting up your messaging experience are going to help you deal with that. Here we have a couple of different options actually that we do recommend or propose to customers that they need to decide which is right for them, which again we'll follow up with inside of the documentation. One last thing on this topic as well. We have an awesome training course. So if you go to training.zendesk.com, I think the course is called I think it's called Migrating from Chat to Messaging for Admins course, if I'm not mistaken. There's like a learning path for it. It's free. It's not long to take. I think it's about 30 minutes or so. And so if you take that course, it answers a lot of, it goes through a lot of, what to expect, what's going to change when you're moving over from chat to messaging, how to deal with some of those, like how do you configure your staffing and whatnot in the messaging environment. That for me is the #1 resource for people who are asking themselves that question to check out. That and the documentation that I'm hoping is coming up in the Help Center.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. And I did just post a link to the training course you just mentioned there in the chat.
Yeah.
All right. And our next question, how can messaging help to increase our productivity?
Yeah. The main benefit of messaging over any other channel really, such as live chat, is the ability to add that 24/7 automation component with your own bot that you can build. We recently surveyed thousands of Zendesk customers that are using messaging, and we found that about a third of them reported a reduction in AHT handle time of about 32%, as well as about a 33% improvement in agent productivity as well. So don't just take our word for it. I'm not just here to tell you messaging is great because it comes with automation, but if you're curious to know for yourself, like the proof is in some of the stats from our very own Zendesk customers. We have an amazing customer stories library as well that has some messaging customer stories in it as well that kind of gives a view of how messaging has helped change their own support operations, to give you a sense of what you're getting into or how messaging can actually help any business really be more productive.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. And so for teams that don't need to offer social media or chat apps as support channels, what other benefits does messaging offer?
Yeah, like message. Like again, sorry if I'm repeating this one, but it does come with that built-in automation component, so that you can add your bot to your conversations. Because the bot's answering 24/7 to customers and intelligently escalate into agents when needed, it can actually help streamline that agent triaging process as well. Think about as well the fact that customers can get their quick answers to common questions right away without having to talk to an agent. They don't have to wait on hold on the phone any longer or wait for a reply via email. Again, the same survey that went out to customers asking them how has messaging helped increase their productivity. Same thing goes for CSAT. I don't have the stat offhand, but I think it was like about a 21% increase in CSAT on average that customers reported on messaging versus other channels.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. What's the difference between messaging and chat from the customer experience?
I think I actually ended up inadvertently answering this when I went on my spiel before, just a little bit earlier, on like what to think about when moving from chat to messaging. Just to quickly repeat, like super quickly. On the customer experience side of things, You're thinking about the fact that you have a new widget that brings the automation to the forefront. I think that's first and foremost. And secondly, what I was just talking about as well, expectation management is going to change, and you really need to think about how you're going to handle that. Shameless plug again to that that training course that deals with that topic.
Awesome, thanks. Next question. So can you share some information about messaging integrations for Slack and Microsoft Teams? No, we got a few questions about
yeah,
this.
we did, and I think like normally we say we don't answer product roadmap questions, but like this one actually came up enough to be like, yeah, let's answer this one. It's actually more so we do actually have a Slack integration that's going to be going live soon. It's currently been announced as an EAP. We just announced it at Relate. It's actually more of an internal help desk use case. So if you're trying to think, because I had a bit of trouble wrapping my own head around it, and I live and breathe messaging every single day, I was like, what is this thing actually going to do? The Slack integration gives it's like, again, internal help desk use case. It allows employees using Slack to engage with internal help desk teams through Slack. So you can ask a question, say that you have a help center set up for internal, to handle internal requests from your employees. You can an employee could ask a question through a messaging widget, and it'll go to your internal Slack where you can handle the conversation from there. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it's going to be all about. Again, it's an EAP, so I don't have too much to even show. But hopefully that gives a bit of a sense of what this whole thing is going to look like. For Teams, no updates just yet, but we're always looking to add more integrations into Zendesk. And this one, I don't know if it's on the roadmap or not. I don't have any updates on that one.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And I just put in the chat a link to our product feedback forums on chat and messaging. So if you have other questions about the roadmap, or you've got you want to leave some other product feedback about your experience using chat or messaging, that's the topic to post to. And if you go there, if you are going to create a new post, be sure to kind of search and see if there's already something that you can add on to there. And if you're going to create a new one, we've got a template so you can give our product team all the information that they need. So next question here. How can you convert a ticket that originated via email, web, or voicemail to text in messaging?
Yeah, so, and I don't know if this is like a bad news answer or not, but unless you have a lot like authentication set up, you can only transfer from messaging to another channel, not the other way around. Like it's a half answer to the question in that like you can't do it in the way that this question was answered from email into messaging, not out of the box anyhow.
And if you do have authentication set up, you can do that. It is possible, or
you need to. I don't know if we have the documentation on that handy, except if you do have authentication set up, then authentication, when it's set up on different channels, allows the conversation to continue across those channels. It doesn't have to be from messaging to the other channel. Authentication will just bring the conversation history to whatever channel it's set up on.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay. How do you understand staffing needs based on existing volume trends with messaging? So yeah, if you're switching to messaging, how do you adjust? Are there any guidelines you can provide around how you would need to adjust your staffing?
Yeah, I'll do my best here. Again, like this is another one where it's going to depend a lot on your own individual business, but I don't want to just kind of answer it I don't want to answer it with an it depends. Each organization is going to end up having its own set of support requirements and have those different staffing needs. And we're going to give a list that gives you some things you might want to consider when determining the number of agents required for support on messaging. Number of visitors is one. So how many visitors to your website help center do you expect during the period that your agents are going to be available? Your agent availability period. So how many hours in the day will agents be available to serve messaging requests? Average conversation duration, as well as the number of concurrent conversations. So how many conversations will an agent serve simultaneously? We have it. It's probably easier to read in the documentation that we'll share out on this. It gives a little bit more information on the topic, but just like two other notes on this subject. We're not actually, Zendesk is not actually like a workforce management tool, right? This is not a paid endorsement in any way, shape, or form, but you could consider using a tool such as TimeShift for your workforce management needs. Otherwise, you know, if you're going the manual approach, think about those considerations that I just shared, as well as going into the documentation as well that we're sharing out to calculate things manually. The other thing to note as well is what I was just talking about earlier. There's this concept of expectation management that needs to be understood when staffing for messaging, because there is no concept of a queue in messaging. You need to do things differently so customers know what to expect, such as using an out-of-office notification, setting your business hours to make your bot behave differently depending on when you're available or not, or enabling continuous conversations to keep the conversation moving across channels after specific thresholds or periods of inactivity. So that way, conversations that aren't happening in real time are still continuing on channels where they could be handled asynchronously, such as to email, for example.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and Brett, you have that link for that planning agent staffing for messaging there, if you can post that. And then Paul, can you add multiple schedules to Flow Builder?
You can actually use the business hours condition to configure the bot to respond differently depending on your business availability. The only support like suite plan that allows you to configure multiple schedules is an enterprise one. Unfortunately, because schedules are now tied to like support hours and whatnot. So just that caveat as well, because that might have been part of the question. So just calling that bit out as well.
Awesome. Okay, next question. What are the best ways to assign reopened messaging tickets to an agent, and any answer bot flow suggestions?
Yeah, so I'll answer this with the way that you can do it today, because we're actually working on a better solution for this based on feedback that we've received. For now, unassigned messaging tickets can be displayed in a view set up for messaging. Agents need to triage the view for handling, or admins can triage the view for handling the ticket and assigning it. Prior to this, businesses should set up an autoresponder and set response time to set context for your customers. Messaging settings will also allow pre-configured text to communicate business hours in the window header via an auto response. And one other thing to think about as well is that chat trigger conditions can be leveraged within the messaging channel as well to evaluate things like account and department availability, and again adjust the context to the user accordingly. Example, you might want to say like, we are online now and we will message you back in 10 minutes or 5 minutes, or we typically respond in 3 minutes, or we're offline now and we're going to reply during normal business hours. I hope that answers the question. I know that the feedback that we received is that we want to be able to do more here, especially when it comes to assigning ticket, like when an agent goes offline, like how do we better handle that? There is a solution that we're working on that should be deployed. I don't want to give exact dates, but we're looking on releasing it in the coming quarters. It should be deployed this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Can we utilize messaging or bots without using chat?
Yeah, you can use just basic messaging without Flow Builder. You don't really need a help center to use basic messaging, but my recommendation is that you set one up, because what actually ends up happening when you're not using Flow Builder and just using basic settings is that your customer asks questions, and AnswerBot is going to look up help center articles that might be related to the question that the customer is asking, and it's going to fire responses based on that. So if you want your bot to look semi-intelligent, please add a help center to it so it can actually respond to your customers.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. What do we got next? What new messaging channels do you see emerging over the next year?
Yeah, so we're actually seeing popularity, I don't know if I'm using the right word here, in customers who have been asking us for bringing Google Business Messaging and Apple Messages for Business. It used to be called Apple Business Chat. It has a new name now, into the suite. These are channels that we already offer today, but only through our Sunshine Conversations platform. But we're actually bringing them into the suite so that you can configure them into the admin panel. I believe that Google Business Messages is coming first, and it's supposed to be coming again by the end of the year. Q4, I had heard, unless that's changed. And again, like, the reason that we're doing this is because, related to the emerging trends and whatnot, part of the question, we're seeing a lot of uptake of businesses are using a lot more of Google Business Messaging. And so they want to be able to have those, be able to manage that channel alongside other channels inside of the suite as well.
And someone was asking about Discord. We do have an integration with Discord. I'll post a link right there. Next question. How can you proactively manage customer expectations when live messaging is available and versus when it's offline?
Yeah, I think we may have answered this already, by virtue of talking about it in some of, peppered here and there throughout some of the other answers. But just to repeat it directly in this question, you can set a schedule in support, and then use the add business hours condition to split your flows into open and closed branches. Closed branches can let customers know that agents aren't available and give them the opportunity to request contact. You can also create an out of office message for when no agents are online. So there's a couple of different options. Again, I think it's probably up to you as the business to decide which one you prefer to put in front of your customers. Personally, I prefer the business hours conditions inside of Flow Builder. I think it's more elegant of a solution. This is just my personal opinion. If I were to set it up, that's what I would do. But again, this is going to depend on probably the size of your support center as well, and how complex your needs are too. So everything that I just said, take with a grain of salt.
So thanks, Paul. So we're at 10 o'clock now. Devin, if we can go over 1 minute, we've got one more question in our sort of docket here. How do you add an external source and query that source via the bot?
Yeah, sure. So good news is that this was just released yesterday, actually. Although I think that there might have been a small issue where we might have just pulled this back, and we're going to re-release it shortly. But there's a new step type called make an API call inside of Flow Builder. If you don't see it in your support instance right away, you should see it in it soon. It comes with certain limitations, but it's functional for many use cases. Remember the video that Lauren was just in the demo video that Lauren was walking us through? She showed us a little bit about what that's actually going to look like, and it's going to allow for more flexible bot integrations. Links in the we have some links that are going to go out on how this whole thing works as well. If you need more than that, again, we do have an open and flexible messaging platform, Sunshine Conversations, formerly Smooch. You can also check that out as well if your needs go above and beyond what we've just released for Flow Builder.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, and thanks everybody for your questions. There were more questions that were submitted. We got like 100 questions pre-submitted, and I know there's questions in the Q&A that we weren't able to address during the event, but we'll follow up with those in the post-event email. So coming soon, I just want to hit on a couple of things that are coming up. One, we've got more events like this one on some of the other items that we announced at Relate. So we'll be talking about the Agent Workspace on June 9th, Sell on June 23rd, and the What's New with the Sunshine Platform on July 28th. So watch for those announcements for those events and sign up if you're interested in those. Also, we will be launching user groups in the community in July, so watch for those. Those will be an opportunity to get together with other customers who share some common interests. So we've got some people signing up to run those, and we'll be rolling that out in the next month or so. And then Q2, the date on here is May 11th. That was our last Relate, but I think we will be having more What's New events coming up as well over the course of the year. And unless, Devin, there's something else I missed about this slide. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all the questions. We appreciate you tuning in. Watch for email tomorrow or Monday about with the link to the recording and all of the questions and things like that. And have a fabulous rest of your day and a fabulous weekend. Thanks for joining us.